I read a lot of books in recovery after I got hurt in the war. Action books, hero books, books where people shot a lot of people. I used to like those books, but all those books made me do in recovery was screw up my face and cry. It wasn't the shooting people. I'd kill every one of those insurgent pieces of shit again. It was the way people who did the shooting in the books got lauded as heroes after their friends died. They'd given me 6 medals. 6. Without intending to, they'd given me a medal for each of my dead friends. I think I would have spent my life in a wheelchair if a chaplain hadn't set me straight about heroes. She explained to me that the heroes don't look like you'd expect them to. Real-life heroism isn't something that comes onto you by accident. That almost only ever happens to regular people. In real life, being a hero is seeing the danger you'd never expected and reacting to it with humanity and decency and doing the right thing so quick you didn't even have time to think about it. It didn't matter that I couldn't save the other people on my team. It was sad that they were gone. It was right for me to miss them. But I'd tried. I'd made a racket. I'd done everything I could and refused to die. That had saved 3 other teams from coming under fire. I decided to stop feeling sorry for myself. That hurt more than getting blown up. Hurt more than knowing all those people were dead and I hadn't been able to save them. And it hurt worse than the people telling me how great I was for what I felt was my greatest failure. I got up out of my hospital bed. I learned to walk again. I talked to Rusty. There'd always been something between us. I think maybe he used to hope without ever saying anything. He never put his hands on me, but there'd always been that beat, that pause when I told him I was going out with somebody. He'd always be friendly with my boyfriends, never showing any signs of jealousy. He was good to his core. One night, huddled in my bed after the agony of physical therapy, he told me that something very bad had happened to him long ago. I said he could tell me anything. He said he couldn't ever find the words for what happened. Sometimes he felt that it had all been a bad dream, but he knew the perfect words to say to help me get over what happened to me. I wanted to die. I wanted to curl up in a ball and never do anything again. It hurt so bad. It felt like everything good in me had been taken. Felt like I was a wicked burden on the whole world. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that of Rusty. So one day, I was going out to chop wood for my aunt. She was mad at me about school, said I wasn't trying hard enough. How could I explain that I was trying as hard as I could and none of it made sense? It was nighttime, so I had to bring a flashlight. You know how when you're a child, you like to whip the light back and forth very fast to make the shadows go away? I nodded. Well, at first it was like the light fought the shadows, and that was a very good and helpful thing for me to think. I needed to feel like there was something in the world strong enough to fight the shadows. But then that made me sad, because why should the light let the dark be its purpose? Why should the light have no purpose but to send the dark away? I felt the black coming to swallow me up then. There was nothing left. I could run away no more, and I knew fighting was still letting the dark inside control me. Then, far off, I saw fireflies dance. Dozens of them, dancing in the night. I watched for hours. They shifted in patterns, signaling each other. What do fireflies care for darkness? I have no head for science, but I remembered that the dark isn't really there. Dark is an absence, not a substance. Light wins, but light does not win by defeating the dark. Light wins because it's light. Light doesn't need nothing except to be. I cried. For someone everyone thought of as a fucking idiot, Rusty sure knew a lot. I decided to live. I decided I would not be defined by what I had lost. I still had life left in me that I could enjoy. so I resolved that I would enjoy it. I remember Rusty. I remember the fireflies. Old Zebula couldn't cry. The gaggle of peculiar old women couldn't cry neither. I came into the cabin and my face was white as a sheet and I couldn't speak without choking. And you know what they said? They asked if it was PTSD from the war. It wasn't the question they wanted to ask. They knew better. We all knew better. I could see it in their eyes. Some of them mentioned things about old stories. They mentioned boogers and haints and the little folk. But no sooner would they say these things than their mouths clapped shut because I could tell they wanted to say more. And what did it matter? What did horseshit legends matter? Because if that booger had truly been alive for centuries, hadn't the people who had written those legends been under the same restrictions as us? Old Zebula came out with her little book and pressed it into my hands. I can't tell you how discouraging that was. That little book was 300 pages in cramped writing, and Zebula had been working on it for nearly 20 years and hadn't been able to find a way to do anything about it. And that was awful, because I needed vengeance. I thirsted for murder. They had killed my Rusty. Rusty, who should have been there by my side when I died. Rusty, who should have been there to make the whole world bigger and better. Rusty, who ate disgusting things and laughed with me about it because his soul was bigger than the ocean of horseshit people used to fill up their idle hours. 6 months now. It's been 6 months. I can't talk about the only thing on my mind. I read old Zebula's book. She has a theory that demons like the booger enter our world under certain contracts and conditions. They are summoned here, and when they are summoned, demons are bound by the form they take. They have to follow the rules of that form. To banish a demon, you follow the rules of its contract, which you track down in legend and destroy it. We couldn't talk about it openly, but I have reason to believe she believes the things she wrote down and has evidence to support them as being true. But you know what? Light doesn't care about the rules of darkness. I remember Rusty running toward that booger. Light doesn't need anything except to be light. I remember the demon being puzzled that its powers had no sway over Rusty. I'm going to find that demon, and I'm going to kill it. I won't follow evil contracts. I don't make deals with devils. I choose the light. I couldn't tell anyone what I was doing. I got all of Rusty's things out of his house. His aunt barely noticed I was taking anything. She just wanted to know why a stranger kept coming in and out of her house pretending to carry armfuls of nothing. She hollered a lot, but I pulled my gun on her and told her to sit down and tied her to a chair. I was barely even thinking at that point. I think maybe old Zebula explained to her later on that I was crazy from PTSD or something. I didn't care. Rusty couldn't write. Rusty couldn't read. That was my biggest frustration when going through his things. None of his possessions struck me as particularly magical. I kept getting the sense that he'd remembered the booger from when it had stolen his intellect. I got the sense that he figured a way to beat its powers. But all he had were beautiful things. Things he liked for themselves. I went back to the church. Took me 2 days to find the courage. His body stunk, not that anybody else could smell it. I'd known it from the war, of course, but I still couldn't believe how strongly people could not see something if they weren't supposed to see it. Even though nobody else could see the body, I had to wait for a quiet moment to go in and take it out and clean up the mess. Wouldn't do for everyone to see me puking for no reason. I hated cleaning up the mess because it made me feel like I was complicit with the demon, but I couldn't leave Rusty there. I dug his grave on a little island way out back in the bog behind his aunt's house. We played there together as kids. I dug deep. I brought stones to keep the earth undisturbed. He would rest in peace. Before I buried him, I searched his body for some clue as to how he'd broken the demon's power. I found an MP3 player in his pocket. There was still some power. Rusty didn't have much music. Mostly, he had books on tape and some poems. I put it in my pocket. There wasn't a prayer good enough for Rusty, but I tried. It took me 6 months to find the booger. I followed knife shows. It's a hard thing to look for a man you can't describe to someone who could never acknowledge that description. I started by looking at women, at mothers, though sometimes fathers had seen as well. Their faces were enough. I spent time around schools looking for children who had given up, children everyone did their best not to notice. I followed intuition. I tracked broken dreams and lost hope and vacant expressions. I walked into a knife show in Tennessee. I saw some Navajo blankets. I saw children there terrified, but not yet assaulted and broken. I took Rusty's MP3 player out of my pocket and put in the earbuds. Rusty's voice was on this track. My eyes teared up to remember what world's audio had reopened to Rusty. I'd shown him books on tape in high school. He reacted like a man given back limbs. I wish I'd known why. It was these poems that had finally taught me the secret. I walked past the stalls, hearing nothing but Rusty's voice as I moved beyond the barrier of the blanket. Rusty reciting Ulysses by Tennyson. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now the strength in which old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. The booger bared its fangs at me and said I know not what. I didn't care. I don't live for boogers. I live for the strength of a 7-year-old boy who could be stripped of everything and still choose to live. I live for the meticulous habits and strange cooking of a peculiar old woman who tried her best even though she failed. I live for love and warmth and light. I do not live to fight or run away from my shadows. My life needs nothing except to be my life. Darkness does not control me because darkness does not define me. And that is the secret. I felt the booger's power again in my stomach, trying to take my will, but I felt it slide away and around me. No power from hell can take away our choice to keep living. I do not live in fear of darkness, but when I am confronted with darkness, I will be myself. And part of being me is that I destroy darkness. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you, my love. I remember the fireflies. The booger fumbled for its knives as I pulled the gun out of my jacket. Contracts? Forms? Rules? Monsters always want you to believe in rules. Monsters steal and lie and kill and demand charity and honesty and healing. Are those your rules? Did you choose them? Do you find them fair? Here's a rule. Force equals mass times acceleration. I found my calm center. My legs spasmed, but I let the feeling pass through me. I pulled the trigger of my gun. I shot the booger in the heart. I pulled the trigger again and hit it in the head. It fell, bleeding ichor into the color of midnight because even a demonic body needs a heart to pump blood. That's a rule no one can break. I emptied a clip into its chest and reloaded. It wasn't moving, but I wasn't going to take any chances. I shot out its eyes until I could see through its head. Demons do follow the rules of forms. Bones once ossified can be broken. Flesh once rendered can be smashed. Joints once joined can be severed. Excuse me, what are you doing? I took out the earphones and turned over my shoulder. The children and other people who had been in the booth with the demon had fled. This was only a passerby, a stranger. My hands were covered in blood. I had 6 trash bags stuffed with different parts of a dead demon. Oh, stretches, exercise. Figured I'd clean a bit too. I know the guy who runs this booth, and he had to leave unexpectedly. The Booger's chest was open before me. The decimated remains of his heart were at my feet. Okay, said the stranger. Just be careful with that knife. Will do, I said. I left the demon in 6 different states, in 6 newly poured parking lots. Zebula and I can even say Booger out loud now. The pressure on us is less. I still can't acknowledge that this happened as a fact. If I try to delete or cross out those sections, my head hurts so much I think I'll die. Maybe this is all just a story. I think that's what the people who wrote and told these first Booger stories were doing, preparing people for later, saying what they couldn't say as fact in a story. I cannot believe that there was only one such demon wandering the world, and that I stumbled on it by chance. Danger comes. It's not the danger you were ready for, but you've got to fight it. Remember the fireflies. And a thought occurs to me sometimes late at night. It feels so good that I'm more afraid to write it down than any of these other memories. I saw those kids again, the kids from the knife show. I saw them dreary, lifeless and hopeless. I saw them gray and ignored. I also saw them eating strange foods, like Rusty did. I saw them eating things that no one that young has any business eating. I think back to the night I buried that Booger's head. I touched his tongue on accident, and I felt the spell on me release the slightest bit. I'd been in a daze when I'd done that bloody business. Now I'm settled some, and I've been watching those kids. It makes me wonder. There hadn't been a food Rusty loved more than tongue. There's a burrito place in town that'll use tongue if you ask. I wonder if I might test out that idea tomorrow. Bring those kids lunch at school. I wonder if maybe the body has a way of telling you what it needs to heal. I still remember where I buried the head after all.